بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Inshallah, I hope everyone is doing well and everyone's Ramadan is hopefully going well as well. Today we're just going to do a short little talk. I won't really drag it on because I like the whole short and sweet message. So inshallah, that's what I'll try to do. I typed it out. I typed out my thoughts so that it could be a little bit more cohesive. So inshallah, we'll begin. So almost every Friday of our mature lives, we've heard talk after talk that's discussed the unseen. Tales of impossible events, divine retribution, swaths of people being brushed aside in a matter of moments. And some of us have always accepted them with a grain of salt, as a type of reluctance, a hesitation. But today, we're faced with an invisible enemy. We are grappling with that same hesitation, the same reluctance. So there are those amongst us who are adamant about social distancing, wearing masks, and sanitizing everything. Others are more skeptical, even prone to disbelief. Some of them are falling into conspiracy theories that this is all just a hoax, or this is just being peddled by governments, or this isn't even, anything serious. However, putting aside those differences, we are all in a similar shock. That how can this happen in our 21st century world? A world where our cars drive themselves, food is delivered to our doorsteps, we can traverse the entire globe in a matter of hours, and yet, after all of our achievements and accomplishments, we've been confined to our own homes. We're left panicking for toilet paper and hand sanitizer. But even after all of this, after the initial shock of everything, we've become accustomed to the situation that we're in. The fear has worn off, we've fallen into a routine, and perhaps at the very beginning, maybe we sought to make some crucial changes in our lives. When we learned that there was this devastating illness that's going all around. However, after that initial shock that's worn off, that zeal has also dissipated. We are no longer as shocked as we were when it first hit the news. We've become accustomed to it. And though we've become complacent and content with our lives living in lockdown, we know for a fact that this world will never be the same after this. After all of this is said and done, this will have lasting repercussions. So for many people, even in our country, this lockdown, it serves as a shock to their lives. It's a complete upheaval of everything that they had established. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not exactly such a terrible thing. Because of this lockdown, we've seen nature begin to heal. We've seen that some governments are actually caring for their citizens. And most importantly, we've seen people appreciating the gift of life. So my suggestion, that perhaps we put this Ramadan that we are in, alhamdulillah, this Ramadan that we're in, that we put it into a similar perspective, perhaps not the same, but a similar perspective to the one which people are viewing this pandemic. This Ramadan where some of us, we are isolated from our families. Personally, I am. We're isolated from our friends. We can't pray in congregation. We can't eat our communal iftars. And maybe this Ramadan, because of all of these changes, maybe it should be the catalyst for us to increase Not only in appreciation for these things in the future, for our friends and our family, and for the sense of community that we have, but also it should make lasting changes in our lives. There's two hadith of the Prophet ﷺ which I wanted to share, and I'm sure, alhamdulillah, we've probably heard these time and time again, but I thought, it doesn't hurt to share them again, inshallah. The Prophet ﷺ, as a narration attributed to him, that he said, "Min husni Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni." From the completeness, the completion of a person's iman, from the perfection of a person's iman and their Islam, is leaving that which does not concern them. So that's one hadith. And then the second hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, "Man lam yada' قول الزور والجهل والعمل به فلا حاجة لله أن يضع طعامه وشرابه." The Prophet ﷺ is attributed to us saying that the person who has not left false speech, they haven't left ignorance or acting upon ignorance, basically being just outright foolish, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need for this person leaving their food and drink. Essentially, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need this person to fast, because they are still doing every single thing that they were doing prior. Now they're just avoiding food and drink. So we know, you and I, we know, alhamdulillah, that our fasting is not only from food and drink and spousal relations, but it's also from lying, gossip, wastefulness in eating and spending, anger and obscene speech. We know that during Ramadan, we should increase in our recitation of Quran. We should increase in extra prayers. We should give more charity. We should care more for our families. We should check in on our friends. And we know that this is the month of improving ourselves. So we do that because we know that this is the month of improving. So we actively work towards that. Because we are conscious that there is a change in the atmosphere. There's just something about the Ramadan air that just tells us to be better. And when we do fast, and when we do increase in our prayers, and we do read more Quran, and we do give more charity and spend more time with our family, then we do feel better. And when we leave our bad habits of gossiping, sharing rumors, talking of useless things, listening to or looking at things we shouldn't, being wasteful in our time and our wealth, we begin to realize our potential, what we can do fully, if we just put our minds to it. So the excuses that we gave before Ramadan, that we don't have enough time, or we don't have enough energy or ability, those excuses no longer fly. Because we know that we can make time. We can spend a little extra energy, and we do in fact have the ability to do all of these things outside the month of Ramadan just as well. So just like during this lockdown, where we are all being careful in protecting our physical bodies, and we're being extra careful in perhaps harming another person, so outside of this lockdown, we should also be just as careful in terms of protecting our spiritual health as well. So we should take care of our souls, we should nurture them, and we should help others in the same way. In the month of Ramadan, this is the month where a person, they realize their full potential. Alhamdulillah, I hope that, we've all been able to see that, when it comes to praying, it's easier. It's easier for us to just pray on time, whether that's because of the lockdown or not, or whether it's avoiding, food and drink. It's not a big deal. Outside of Ramadan, fasting is not easy, right? Fasting is pretty tough outside of Ramadan. But in this month, for some reason, everyone just becomes accustomed to it, which is good and bad. It's good because we know that, hey, I'm not as weak and feeble as I thought, that, Allah did not make me incapable of fulfilling the obligations that He has given me. Allah has given me the ability to do so, but I've just been distracted by everything else, and I've just thought that, I can't do it, and I thought Allah was just being a little bit too harsh with me. Because in Ramadan we realize, hey, guess what, I can do it. So that's the good. But then there's also the bad side of it. There's the flip side of the coin, that we become accustomed to it. And we human beings, we are creatures of habit. So I mentioned how, we've become accustomed to lockdown. At first, we were so shocked, and it became like a surprise. But now it's become the norm. Now it's become the norm. People are no, we are no longer. Most of us are no longer even complaining about it, because it's just life. We can't even really remember what life was like outside of lockdown before, when we were traversing the streets without any fear. So the same thing for Ramadan. When Ramadan was first coming upon us and it was just a couple of days away, we were so eager. We were looking forward to it. And the first few days, first 3, 4, 5 days, it was a challenge to wake up for suhoor, and it was a challenge to pray at night, and it was a challenge to read our Quran, and it was a challenge to give our charity. But then it became easier and easier and easier until it just became a force of habit. So now, the suhoor is not as special as it was at the beginning. The Quran recitation is just, well, I just have to do my one juz today, so let me just do it. I just have to pray, so let me just pray. Oh, I always give this much in charity every day of Ramadan, so let me just give that. And that's what it becomes. Iftar just becomes that. Dua just becomes, just, okay, well, when's the food coming? Okay, I'll come downstairs 2 minutes before the food's here. That's what it becomes. Because we are creatures of habit. So there's good in that, and then there's bad in that. This is unfortunately how we often treat our prayers, our salah. A person they can never pray. A person can be someone who doesn't pray even a single prayer a day. But, slowly they get into religion, they get into deen, and then they begin to pray. And then they go from praying 0 times a day to 5 times a day. And they will be really into it. But then in a matter of a few months, maybe a couple of years, it becomes a force of habit as well. They just get used to it, and it just becomes muscle memory, right? The person, we just make our sajda and we already know what we're saying. It's sometimes like if you're driving home from somewhere, and it's a long drive, and you just zone out, you'll space out, and then, it happens to me sometimes. I'll be driving home from the masjid, and I will leave the masjid, and then I'll get home and I'll park and I'll say, wait, did I even drive here? Because we completely space out and our body just does everything. It just does the rest. So that's what our prayers become most of the time. That's what our recitation of Quran becomes, unfortunately. That it's just reading. It's just reading. But because it's in a language that some of us cannot understand, then, it's not a big deal. We don't go back and repeat what we read. Just like prayer, because it's in a language that we don't understand, we don't really go back and repeat what we should, understand. But if we have a book in English, perhaps, and we read a page, or we read 2 sentences, and we weren't paying attention, then we'll think, wait, what did I just read? Then we'll go back to make sure that we understand it. But that's not the same thing when it comes to Quran. That's not the same thing when it comes to our dhikr. That's not the same thing when it comes to our salah. That we just, okay, I have to get it done, let me just get it out of the way. Is the story of a scholar that once he was spending some time with some members of the community, and it was, they had been traveling, so the food was ready, and the community members began to say, well, let's, the time for Maghrib came in, so the community people, they started saying, to the scholar, to the imam, that let's hurry up and pray so that we can pray our Maghrib, or we can pray our Isha, and then we can have, we can relax and have food after. And the scholar, he kind of turns and he switches it up on them. He says, why don't we hurry up and eat so that we can comfortably pray after? You should just think about that just for a moment. That is prayer just an obligation? Is it just a chore that we just get out of the way? Is fasting, is Ramadan, when Ramadan comes around, is that what it is? Is it just a chore that, I have to do it, so I do it? Not because, I see that this is a way for me to actually attain what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to attain out of fasting. He wants me to become more cognizant of Him. Am I going into Ramadan just saying, oh, well, it's going to be fun to hang out with everyone, it's going to be fun to have traditional foods for a month, and it'll be nice to lose some weight? Is that how we're going into Ramadan? Is that how we came into it? Now we're at the halfway mark. We're at the halfway mark. One thing our teachers, one of my teachers always used to say is, we sometimes, I'm sure we've heard hadith or stories of some of these hadith masters who have memorized 100,000 hadith, or they've memorized the entirety of. And there are today scholars. One of my teachers, Bilal, he's memorized the entirety of Sahih al-Bukhari, so that's quite a few hadith. And our teacher says that if you just think that that's an impossible task, then you've already lost the battle. Then if you think it's impossible, then you'll never ever be able to attain it, because you literally think that no one can do that. But if you think, hey, this other person was able to do it, I can also do that same thing. So when we came into Ramadan, what did we think? That, oh, I'm not a tahajjud person, I just can't do it. Or I'm not a person who can, I'm just very frugal with money, I just can't force myself to part with what I've earned. Or I'm just, I can't do entire Quran in one Ramadan, that's just not possible for me. I can't do it. Is that what we if that's what we thought, if we just set that, the bar of impossible, we just close that door, then we'll never be able to go in, because the door is closed. And right now we're halfway through. So if a person is thinking that, oh, well, I didn't set any goals, or I didn't have any ambitions before Ramadan began, so what? It's, better late than never. Better late than never. So right now we still have that option. We still have the time, and the opportunity is still available to us, that we make goals, and we make a firm intention of how we're going to spend the next second half of Ramadan. The first half is done. So how are we going to make the most of the second half? And the person who thinks that, well, I've only read like 2 or 3 juz of Quran, and it's only hardly half of Ramadan is done. So what? So what? Sit down and do as much as you can. Just make a decision that, I'm going to finish the entirety of the Quran, and just work hard on it. Honestly, if a person just continuously puts in the effort, then that person will continue to improve. It will just get better and better. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give that person tawfiq. He'll give you and I tawfiq, if we sincerely make our effort. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whenever He talks about, He talks about believers, He talks about people who are successful. I'm sure all of us know Surah Asr. I think a lot of us are reading that in Taraweeh these days. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, Wal Asr, Innal insana lafi khusr. By the time, indeed man is in loss. Mankind is in loss, is in complete loss, except whom? Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, except those who believe and they do action. And if you look for it in the Quran, you will find it time and time and time again, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the people of belief, but then He pairs belief with action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never just leaves belief by itself, because that does not suffice. That does not suffice. A person, if they know what's right and they refuse to act on it, then this will only earn the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they know what's right, but they won't act on it. Or they know what's wrong, and then they will continuously act on it. This will only earn the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But a person who continuously tries and they strive for it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely have mercy on them. He will see the efforts. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. This is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. There are so many dimensions to this hadith, and one of them is just this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. He knows that this little action that you are doing, the alarm that you set to wake up for tahajjud, even though you didn't wake up for it. You set an alarm to wake up for tahajjud, but you didn't wake up for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will reward you for tahajjud as if you already prayed, as if you prayed that night, even though you slept the whole night. Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is just a little bit of a reminder for myself, more importantly, that we are halfway through now. We're halfway through this month. And this is a unique Ramadan. Perhaps this is the only time you will ever go through a Ramadan like this in our lives. And we should not let it be one where we just forget it, or, oh, it was an interesting experience. No, it should be the one that, it serves as the catalyst for us changing our lives. Because now that people are seeing what a lot of companies are seeing, that, we don't have to have our workers come in, and we can actually save on renting office spaces, just have them work from home. And governments are seeing that, hey, well, we can actually do a lot with, we can improve this whole climate change situation, or we can, provide for our citizens, and we can give them universal income, whatever it might be. People are realizing all kinds of different things when they are forced into this kind of situation. So for us to say that, oh, this is a terrible calamity, then that means that there's nothing good coming out of it. We should not think of it like that. We should not think of it like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He say? Inna ma'al usri yusra. Indeed, after hardship. This is a mistake people make when they say, they translate it as with. You cannot have ease and hardship at the same time. That's, two opposites. How can you have two opposites? So the ma'iyah here, the ma'a here, it refers to immediately after. Immediately after hardship, there will be ease. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this hardship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and it's one on, it's a global level. It's pretty much unprecedented at this rate. There's ease to come after it. There's ease to come after it. So this Ramadan as well, leaving food and drink is not an easy thing. Leaving spousal relations is not an easy thing. People want to engage in what Allah has made halal for them. It's not an easy thing. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done it so that, look, now we have so much free time that we would have just spent eating, or time that we might have spent doing things that are detrimental not to our physical health necessarily, but definitely to our spiritual, mental, and emotional health. Definitely. Those of us who are quick to anger, what is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ? He says that the person, if someone begins to argue with you and you're fasting, tell them, inni sa'im, I'm fasting. So these things which are, very, very detrimental to us, like I said, mentally and emotionally, just fasting itself discourages us from engaging in them. And it actually acts as a barrier between us, falling into those things. So we see that, man, when I actually practice on the things that Islam tells me to, there's actually so much benefit. Like, I personally feel so much better. If I feel better, then my family will feel better. If my family feels better, then other families feel better, our community feels better, and so on and so forth. Then that's an exponential effect. And right now, we're talking a lot about this whole exponential situation. We've seen the graphs. So we see that when we are not destroying the earth, how nice things eventually turn out. Perhaps not for ourselves, but definitely for the other creatures that are living on God's green earth. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us for. He says that, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. Indeed, I'm going to put on this earth a vicegerent, someone who is the responsible after me. This is what a khalifa is, right? So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu is a khalifa of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he took on the responsibilities and obligations. So you and I, we've been given the responsibilities and obligations of taking care of this earth. And unfortunately, the only way we've been able to take care of it has been by locking ourselves in our homes. But now we've seen that, actually, look, we were destroying everything by way of our terrible habits, by our bad habits and our, things that we have been we've done so much that, we don't even think of them as wrong or evil. And yet they've been so destructive to the world that we live in, to our home. Right? This is literally, it's our home, and it's been so destructive to it. So in the same way, we should realize that, by fasting where we stay away from food, and we stay away from drink, and we stay away from false speech, and we stay away from anger, and we stay away from looking and listening to that which we shouldn't. We stay away from bad habits and bad deeds. We start to realize, wow, I'm personally healing myself. My family is healing when I'm not getting angry at them, or when I'm not talking back to them, or when I'm actually taking care of them and the needs of the family. Then our family is also healing. So just like, the home, the entire the globe, the home of of all of mankind is healing itself through fasting in this month of Ramadan, we are also realizing we can heal ourselves by acting on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mandated for us. So in the same way that He has made us responsible for this earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us responsibilities in the month of Ramadan. And when we actually enact those responsibilities, and we actually fulfill the rights of the month of Ramadan, we actually get the benefits and the virtues of that month. So there's half of the month is left. Half of the month of this of Ramadan is left, and we should make an active effort that, inshallah, from today until the day of Eid, I'm going to read more Quran. More, not just Quran, more Quran. I'm going to pray more. I'm going to give more in charity. And I'm going to spend more time with my family. I will do more khidmat of my children, of my parents, whatever it might be. I will reach out to more people in my community. How are they doing? How can I help? I will do more of these things. And the more that I do them, then they will become inculcated as good habits. So the evil habits that we've been doing, the less we do them, and the newer, better habits that we add into our lives, they will take the place of these evil habits that have become so customary for us, unfortunately. So inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me tawfiq, may He give you tawfiq, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep all of us safe, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us siha and afiyah, and may He subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to reunite very soon, very shortly, inshallah. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته